At 0519 local time, the carrier's surface picture changes. 3 clear arcs tighten across the scope, then separate. 6 contacts in total. Speed rising. Bearings drawing inward. No civilian patterns, no aimless drift, only purpose. On the bridge, no one raises their voice. They do not need to. Track 6. Classify surface vessels. The words are calm, flat, and professional. Screens refresh. Outside, the sea looks almost peaceful. A low steel gray swell under a quiet sky. Nothing dramatic. Nothing obvious. But inside the ship, the rhythm shifts by one small degree. Enough to feel, not enough to show. The carrier holds course. At this distance, appearances mean very little. The ocean always looks empty until it suddenly does not. The contact's close to 20 nautical miles. Their spacing tightens. The formation begins to show intent. 2 vessels high on the starboard arc, 2 low on port, 2 easing in behind the wake. Not a parade, not a coincidence. It is a shape drawn by people who understand exactly what they are doing. Confirm affiliation. A pause follows. Data aligns. Hull profiles match stored references. Covered arrays, familiar superstructure lines. The reply comes back without emotion. Russian naval group, 6 surface vessels. No one reacts. No one comments. The bridge takes in the information and keeps moving. The carrier does not turn away. It does not speed up. It does not slow down. 80,000 tons of steel continue on the same heading at the same pace as if nothing has changed. Because for the moment, nothing has. Below deck, the Combat Information Center hums with controlled focus. Consoles glow in the dim light. Tracks are refined, numbered, and time-stamped. Every change in bearing is recorded. Every increase in speed is noted. No elevated posture is declared. No warning tone breaks the air. The ship remains alert, measured, and restrained. This is how professionals handle pressure. At 15 nautical miles, the Russian vessels complete the curve. The circle is not close enough to be careless, but it is exact enough to be impossible to miss. Close enough to send a message. Far enough to avoid crossing the line. No radio traffic cuts through the silence. No calls are answered. That silence says more than any transmission could. On the flight deck, aircraft remain secured. Crews continue their scheduled movements. To an untrained eye, everything looks routine. To anyone who understands the moment, it is something else entirely. Discipline under pressure. Motion without escalation. Closest point of approach still decreasing. The report is plain. No urgency, no adjectives, just numbers and distance. The carrier's radar arrays continue their steady sweep, painting the contacts again and again. Each return is sharp, each position clear. There is no confusion about who is watching whom. Everyone here understands the balance. Everyone understands how narrow it is. At 10 nautical miles, the Russian vessels match speed with almost perfect precision. They slide into parallel motion, holding station beside a platform heavier than all of them combined. It is not a direct challenge. It is a message, a test of patience. On the bridge, the captain watches the water ahead rather than the screens. He has seen this pattern before. Different oceans, different flags, same calculation. The order comes quietly. Maintain course. Log every maneuver. No new condition is announced. No posture is displayed. The carrier does not need to prove readiness. Readiness is already understood. Across the water, the low vibration of engines carries on the wind. 6 gray vessels are now visible to the naked eye, their hulls cutting clean lines through the gray sea. Their wakes are steady, controlled, and deliberate. Nothing about this is happening by chance. At 8 nautical miles, the ring draws in again. This is the distance where small mistakes can become large moments, where someone might speak too soon, move too quickly, or let pressure decide for them. But none of that happens. Inside the carrier, systems keep tracking, people keep breathing. The ship keeps moving forward, steady and composed as the circle forms around it. 6 Russian naval vessels, 1 American aircraft carrier. No exchange, no warnings, no one steps out of line. At 7 nautical miles, the geometry settles into place. The 6 Russian vessels take their positions with almost mechanical precision. 2 forward on the carrier's starboard bow, 2 offset to port, 2 trailing just beyond the wake, riding the disturbed water where distance becomes harder to judge. This is not a display meant for cameras. This is a formation meant for professionals. On the bridge, the spacing is understood immediately. They're holding station. The report is calm and observational. No guesses, no extra language. Just what can be confirmed. Speed readings align almost perfectly with the carrier's own. The Russians are not pursuing. They are pacing. The carrier offers no matching move, no counter pattern, no wider turn, no effort to break the formation. 80,000 tons of steel continue on the same heading, steady and unmoved, forcing the circle to adjust around the carrier instead of the other way around. That matters. A circle only has power if the center reacts. At 6 nautical miles, the Russian vessels begin small course corrections. Minor rudder inputs, controlled adjustments, enough to tighten the angles without pushing the distance too far. Each movement is recorded. Bearings refresh, tracks settle. The circle seems to breathe, widening and narrowing by fractions of a mile. At this range, there is still space. There is still control. This is pressure created by proximity alone. On the flight deck, nothing changes. Aircraft remain secured. Elevators stay in place. Crew movements continue on schedule, visible to anyone watching from the surrounding ships. The message is quiet, but unmistakable. Routine has not been broken. Below deck, sensors continue to observe. No aggressive posture appears. No sudden system shift changes the tone. The carrier watches without reaching, records without pushing. The Russian vessels respond the same way. Their own systems remain controlled. No sharp signals, no sudden actions that would cross the invisible line between pressure and provocation. This is restraint meeting restraint, tension held in perfect balance. At 5 nautical miles, one of the trailing vessels edges closer to the carrier's wake. It rides the disturbed water with purpose, testing how much movement its hull can absorb while still holding position. The shift is noticed at once. Track 5, adjusting aft position. Acknowledged, logged. No response follows. The carrier does not change speed to make the maneuver harder. It allows the test to continue. Confidence has weight. Here, it weighs tens of thousands of tons. From the bridge wing, the gray hulls are now clearly visible. Numbers are hard to read, but the silhouettes are sharp. Crew can see movement on the Russian decks. Watchstanders in position, binoculars raised, cameras almost certainly recording. This is close-range observation on both sides. No one is pretending otherwise. Still, no words are exchanged. Radio silence becomes its own language. At 4 nautical miles, the circle tightens once more. The Russian vessels are now well inside visual comfort range. Close enough to feel present, far enough to avoid being called openly hostile. It is the narrow zone of maritime pressure, shaped and refined through decades of encounters just like this. Inside the carrier, no one leans closer to a screen. No one raises their voice. No one turns the moment into a performance. Training holds. Professional distance is maintained, even as physical distance continues to shrink. Closest point of approach holding. The nearest distance has stabilized. That is intentional too. The Russians are not trying to draw a response through sudden movement. They are trying to create one through persistence. It does not work. The carrier keeps cutting a clean path through the water, its wake stretching behind it in a straight, unbroken line. Every mile traveled without changing course repeats the same message. You can move around us. You cannot move us. At 3 nautical miles, the circle is complete. 6 naval vessels. Even spacing, matched speed, precise geometry. Anyone watching from the outside might call it a standoff. Anyone inside understands it differently. It is a waiting game, and waiting favors the platform that has no reason to hurry. No warning tones sound, no orders raise the level, no systems shift into a more forceful posture. The moment simply hangs there, heavy and unresolved, balanced on the discipline of 2 naval forces that understand how quickly discipline can be tested. The sea remains calm, the ships remain close, the silence remains untouched. For now, the circle holds. Deep inside the carrier, there is no view of the horizon. There does not need to be. The Combat Information Center moves with quiet energy. Screens glow, data streams update. Voices stay short, clear, and precise. Every contact outside the hull is already present here, reduced to symbols and numbers that tell the story more clearly than any set of eyes could. 6 surface tracks, stable, correlated, time-stamped. Nothing flashes for attention, nothing demands a reaction, and that is the point. Maintain passive posture. The instruction moves through the space without friction. Sensors continue to listen rather than announce themselves. Radar systems observe rather than challenge. Every system does exactly what it was designed to do. No more, no less. This is not hesitation. This is control. The carrier's protective network is layered, redundant, and ready, but none of it needs to be displayed. Precision tracking systems remain quiet. Mounted systems stay still. Readiness here is internal, measured in completed checklists and drills repeated until they become instinct. In the Combat Information Center, watchstanders do not guess at intent. Intent is not the focus. Behavior is. And behavior is being recorded in remarkable detail. Bearing changes, speed shifts, station-keeping accuracy. Patterns are forming quietly, frame by frame. Above them, on the bridge, the captain stands with his hands resting lightly on the chart table. He watches the water ahead, not the vessels closing around him. He does not need to watch them. The ship is already watching for him. Reports arrive in a steady rhythm. Track 2, holding speed. Track 4, maintaining parallel course. No unusual emissions detected. Each update is met with a nod or a single word. Nothing more is needed. Everyone here understands the stakes. More importantly, everyone understands the process. This is where experience shows. A less disciplined crew might feel the need to respond, to signal strength with movement, to break the circle, to force the moment into clarity. But clarity is not always an advantage. Sometimes ambiguity favors the side that can remain calm inside it. The carrier does not rush to end the moment. It allows the moment to unfold. Below decks, other parts of the ship feel the shift without ever seeing it. Engineering spaces hold steady. Power output remains unchanged. Air operations remain paused, not because they have to, but because there is no reason to alter the plan. Normality becomes a tool. The Russian vessels outside are searching for signals, a change in speed, a shift in heading. Sudden flight activity, a sharp burst of sensor energy. They see none of it. The carrier gives them nothing to read, nothing to misjudge, nothing to turn into a reason for escalation. That silence is not empty. It is deliberate. Inside the Combat Information Center, one operator pulls up historical overlays, comparing the current formation to past encounters. The shape is familiar, but not identical. No two moments at sea ever are. Still, the lesson remains the same. The side that controls the tempo controls the outcome. And right now, the tempo belongs to the ship at the center of the circle. Minutes pass, then more. These are the kind of minutes that stretch, not because something happens, but because nothing does. The pressure outside begins to change shape as the lack of reaction forces the surrounding vessels toward a choice. Hold the formation forever, or change something. Inside the carrier, no one rushes that decision. The captain breaks the quiet with one sentence, spoken almost conversationally. Let them work around us. That is all. The order only reinforces what the ship has been doing from the beginning, moving forward, unchanged, steady, and unhurried. The carrier's mass, its predictability, and its refusal to be shaped by the circle become the dominant factors in the equation. Power in this moment is not loud, it is patient. The Combat Information Center continues to record. The bridge continues to observe. The ship continues on course. Outside, 6 vessels maintain their ring. Engines steady, crews alert, eyes fixed on a carrier that refuses to acknowledge the pressure being placed around it. Inside, no one celebrates, no one relaxes. Professional focus remains absolute because everyone aboard understands the same truth. When nothing happens in a moment like this, it is often because one side is waiting for the other to lose patience. And the carrier has all the time it needs. The first change is almost too small to notice. One of the Russian vessels on the port arc drifts slightly wide, barely a degree of rudder, barely a knot of speed. By itself, it means very little. In context, it means everything. Inside the Combat Information Center, the adjustment is caught immediately. Track 3 deviating left, speed -1. Acknowledged, logged. No response is ordered. The carrier continues straight ahead, calm and steady, forcing the geometry to stretch. A circle can only hold if every point agrees to hold it. One small deviation places strain on the entire shape. The other vessels begin to compensate. Track 2 tightens slightly. Track 1 eases back to preserve spacing. The formation flexes, then steadies again. But the rhythm has changed. What was once perfectly synchronized now requires effort, and effort shows. On the bridge, the captain does not move. He watches the water ahead as the bow cuts through it cleanly and without hesitation. He knows what the deviation means, so does everyone else. Pressure is a limited resource. Applying it takes energy, maintaining it takes even more. Another minute passes. Then something subtle happens aboard the carrier. Not a maneuver, not a signal. A change in posture so quiet that only professionals would recognize it. A sensor suite adjusts elevation by a few degrees. A readiness state updates silently in the background. Nothing visible from outside, nothing dramatic, but the message carries. We are not static, we are not unaware, and we are not acting on impulse. The Russian vessels seem to register it. The portside ship that drifted wide corrects slightly, then pauses as if reconsidering. The trailing vessel near the wake eases away by a few hundred yards, choosing cleaner water over closeness. The starboard pair holds steady, but their spacing widens just enough to break the visual symmetry. The circle is still there. It is simply no longer tight. No radio calls follow. No warnings are issued. No announcements are made. The turning point arrives without ceremony and without sound. It arrives because maintaining the circle now requires more coordination than it is worth. The carrier never forced this moment. It waited for it. Inside the Combat Information Center, the watch team keeps tracking in silence. Bearings widen little by little. The closest point of approach increases by tenths of a mile. Numbers do not lie. They do not exaggerate either. Circle loosening. One operator notes it in a neutral voice. The bridge does not celebrate the assessment. There is nothing to celebrate yet. This is not a victory, it is a shift. Outside, the Russian vessels adjust again. One moves into a parallel track. Another reduces speed by half a knot to avoid overlapping wakes. The formation begins to change, shifting from a circle into a loose arc. Still present, still watchful, but no longer enclosing. The difference is clear. The carrier remains on the same heading, at the same speed, following the same path it has held since the first contact appeared on the scope. It does not take advantage of the change. It does not accelerate to open the gap. It does not turn to force separation. It simply allows the space to open on its own. That restraint carries weight. Now the Russian vessels face a choice of their own. Tighten the formation again and spend more effort holding it, or accept the widening distance and shift posture. The carrier gives no hint of which outcome it expects. Minutes pass, the gap holds, then it grows. One by one, the Russian vessels settle into parallel motion. They are no longer angled inward, no longer shaping the carrier's path. They remain close enough to observe, but far enough to step away at any moment. The pressure phase ends without a single word spoken. On the bridge, the captain finally looks toward the contacts. Just a glance. Enough to confirm what the data already shows. Continue transit, he says quietly. That is all. No declaration, no final remark. The ship simply does what it came to do. Move forward. The Russian vessels remain alongside for a time, now more like shadows than barriers. Eventually, their courses begin to separate. Slightly at first, then more. The geometry dissolves back into open water. There are no headlines in this moment. No dramatic footage, no single action to replay. But every naval professional watching would understand what happened. The turning point did not come from speed. It did not come from sudden movement. It came from patience, discipline, and the refusal to let someone else's pressure define the course. The sea opens again. The carrier keeps moving, and the moment passes, leaving behind only tracks on a chart and lessons that will remain long after the water smooths over. By the time the distance opens beyond 10 nautical miles, the encounter is already finished. No signal marks the end. No radio call announces disengagement. The Russian vessels simply ease out of alignment one after another until the shape that defined the moment no longer exists. What remains are parallel tracks and widening water, observation without pressure. The carrier does not acknowledge the change. It continues on the same heading, at the same speed, its wake stretching straight and uninterrupted across the sea. From the bridge, the horizon looks almost exactly as it did before the first contact appeared. Calm, empty, deceptively ordinary. Inside the ship, systems step down gradually, not from relief, but because procedure allows it. Logs are finalized, timestamps are confirmed. Every maneuver, Russian and American alike, is locked into records that will be reviewed later, stripped of emotion and reduced to facts. That is how encounters like this truly end. Not with a speech, with documentation. The Russian vessels remain visible for a while. Gray silhouettes against the water, still close enough to watch, but no longer close enough to shape events. Eventually, one adjusts course a few degrees outward. Another eases back on speed. The last trailing hull fades into the distance, its wake dissolving into the same gray water that hides everything else at sea. No one aboard the carrier cheers. No one exhales for effect. This was not a contest that required celebration. It was a test, and tests are measured by outcomes, not by reactions. What surprises most observers is not what happened during the circle, but what did not happen after it. There is no chase, no display of superiority, no public message sent across open channels. The carrier does not linger. It does not turn back to reclaim space. It simply continues. Mission intact, posture unchanged. That restraint is the real message. In naval encounters, escalation is easy. Speed can be increased. Sensors can be pushed harder. Aircraft can be brought into motion. Every Navy involved understands exactly how to move one step further. The discipline is in choosing not to. The Russian naval vessels applied pressure through proximity, formation, and silence. The carrier absorbed that pressure without giving up shape, speed, or intent. When the effort required to maintain the circle became greater than the effect it produced, the formation began to come apart on its own. No direct confrontation, no warnings exchanged, no line openly crossed, and still the outcome is clear. The carrier never gave up control of its movement. It never allowed the encounter to dictate its behavior. It made the surrounding vessels adapt around it, not the other way around. That is why this moment carries meaning far beyond the stretch of water where it happened. Every Navy understands this equation. Power is not measured only by size, capability, or numbers. It is measured by who controls the tempo, who decides when a situation changes. and who does not need to force that change in order to shape the outcome. From the outside, the encounter might look almost uneventful. 6 naval vessels move around a carrier, then they no longer do. No dramatic visuals, no alarms, no sudden turn that defines the scene. But inside professional circles, the lesson is obvious. The most effective response was silence. The strongest move was staying on course. The deciding factor was patience. As the last Russian vessel slips beyond visual range, the carrier's watch rotations continue as scheduled. Engineering maintains steady output. Navigation checks remain routine. The ship does not mark the moment with ceremony. It does not need to. At sea, encounters like this are not about winning a scene. They are about preserving freedom of movement without crossing lines that do not need to be crossed. This one ended the way disciplined encounters often do. Not through force, through understanding. Understanding of limits. Understanding of capability. Understanding of who held steady and who had to adjust. The ocean closes behind the carrier, the tracks fade, the water smooths over. But for those who were watching, on both sides, the message remains. Sometimes the most powerful outcome is not what a navy does. It is what it chooses not to do.